Welcome to this session about Project Octopus, or if you have heard the name Horizon Data, it's the same thing. My name is JJ Zhuang. I'm Chief Architect of Project Octopus and Horizon Suite. Along with me here today, Mr. Kevin Henriksen. He heads the engineering organization leading both QA and development for Project Octopus as well as Horizon Data. So together, Kevin and I today are going to present the concept of Project Octopus and how it fits into the grand schema of this Horizon Suite. So before I start, let me first take a very quick poll. How many of you here don't know anything about Project Octopus? All right, I see one hand. Okay, so in that case, most of you are already familiar with it. So just for the benefit of that gentleman over there, I'm going to still talk about a little bit of the overview, but then we're going to jump right into the demo and the technical stuff. Now, let's get one thing out of the way, why there are two names. So the name Octopus was the original code name for the project when we started out building the product. And now that we are getting ready to make it a part of the Horizon Suite, the official name of this product becomes Horizon Data. And it's going to be the part that's responsible for data management in the entire Horizon Suite. So if you want to learn more about the whole suite, there are a number of sessions there. In fact, you know what? Those sessions may no longer be relevant because they are in the past. This slide was from yesterday, so I should have skipped that. So, you know, if you missed any of that and you want to learn more about it, come up to stage after the talk, and I can fill in with the details. So today's agenda, we're going to do a quick overview. And then Kevin's going to show us a demo of Project Octopus and also some of the Horizon Suite features. And then we're going to talk about the architecture design of the product and also how you're going to deploy it in a vCenter environment. And finally, we're going to talk about what we have learned from you, whoever have participated in our beta program and have applied to be part of the beta program. So with that, let's jump into the overview. And you know, you probably have seen these few slides many times by now, so I'm going to go very quickly. There was a time that life was easier. There was this single desktop environment that all the users use, and it's all behind a firewall. It's on the same domain, and the way to share data is very easy. You just set up a SIF share and everybody mount to their desktop, right? And, you know, don't we all miss that time? So now we know that the world has changed since then, right? All the users want to use their devices. They want to bring their device into the company. They want to use their device to do work. And they want to run all kinds of applications on these devices. More than that, they also want to access company data on these devices they choose. And these are the same devices they are going to play Angry Birds on. So how are we going to manage those? So in addition to data and applications, there's also this long tail of legacy Windows applications that are still only available on Windows environment. And we can't just ignore those, because even though we know that, that the world is moving into a new direction, those applications, those business applications are still going to be important to many users for years to come. So the Horizon Suite is a management platform created to integrate the management of all these different things, applications, data, and the desktop applications. So how does Project Octopus fit into this picture? Project Octopus, or Horizon Data, is the part of the suite that manages the user's data. It is the one that makes the data available on various devices, set the policies on how to manage the data. We'd like to think that there are primarily three tenets of Project Octopus. There's the left column, more end-user concern. It is about access and share by anytime, anyone, anywhere. Probably shouldn't say anyone. Probably should say anyone properly authorized. But you know what I mean, right? Anyone will be bad. Anyone will be more like a Dropbox. But this is more like anyone who is an AD user who's properly provisioned and who has the permission to share the data. Now, the second column is about deployment, more a operations concern. We want to make the product very easy to deploy in either a service provider environment or in IT data center. And in fact, in V1, our primary focus is on making it very easy to deploy in IT data center in on-prem environment. And finally, the right column, it's the IT administrator's concern. How do I set policies and know what's happening to the data? So we have a few key features to address those. First of all, IT admin can set policy to regulate things like a storage, retention policy, who can share to whom, and they can also use that to track devices, and then in fact, if they want, they can remote wipe a device when the employee leaves the company or the device is lost. And in addition to all that, we have an audit trail in the system to keep track of every single object ever existed in the system. From the time when a file is first created, the tracking starts. And every single time when any user updates the file, we'll know who, when, and from which device updated the file. We also track revisions that way. And finally, when the file is deleted, that's also an entry in the audit trail. So every single thing that ever happened in the system, you can go back and find out what happened. So how do you deploy it? It comes in a vApp package. You drop that into a vCenter environment. You bring up the VMs, go to the admin console, check a few boxes, and you're ready to run. Out of box, it's going to support a range of clients. It's going to support the Mac and Windows Synclines, the iOS and Android tablets and phones, and the browser clients, the web clients. Doing all that with single sign-on already integrated into all these clients so that you don't have to mess with provisioning users into the system and manage their passwords. It is all coming directly from AD, auto-provisioned into the system, and then the authentication is with AD as well. So that's an overview of what the product is. So before we jump into demo, so far, any questions? All right, sounds like you're all familiar with the content so far. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kevin, who's going to show us a demo.
Thanks, JJ. So this is our alpha code that you guys saw a small demo if you came to the keynote on Tuesday morning with Steve. So I'm going to pull this up. So first of all, this is the web client. This is what you would see, or an end user would see when they log in. They see their files in the first tab. Quickly just show that there's also applications, thin apps available for those that are part of this, part of the rest of the suite. This is the app manager portion, and then if you have Vue, you can have your Vue clients involved there, so you can launch those again from the web, all single sign-on. But today, the demo, I'm going to focus mostly on files. So you'll notice that folders that look like this, that are just regular, these are folders that I own that are my folders, and I can, share that. Again, connects into AD. All the users are synced in. I have different permissions that I can set: view, view edit, or admin. I can go in and invite somebody. So let's just type a fake Gmail address here. And so here I go to try to share external, and you notice by policy this system's configured that admins cannot be external users. And again, this is a policy that you as the IT admin can set around who and who can't be shared with. Similarly, you can restrict the domains. You can say that maybe I can only share with Cisco and EMC, but can't share with Citrix. Or only people in a certain executive class can share with certain domains, and the people in engineering and marketing group cannot share. You can set the types of file types that can be shared. And again, all of this we'll go through a couple of the settings screens in the back. But there's a lot of policy and kind of knobs around control around who can and can't share these files or has access to share. So if I go into one here, let's say like click on a doc, we have really rich preview. And if those of you that were part of the beta, let me try to fix the resolution here. Is that better? All right, cool. So basically we have really rich Microsoft-based preview that will actually convert all of the documents into PDFs and makes them really clean and high fidelity preview. And first of all, you think, oh, this is pretty cool. You can see all the documents. It's really nice to click through them and see, you know, rich little text or something if you see that, or if you pop a PowerPoint down. But most importantly, this is actually a security feature, because as when we get to the demo on the mobile clients or even on the web clients, there's policy around you can disable the download of files and say that people can only preview, or end users can only preview, and you can disable open with on the mobile clients, and we'll demo that in a bit. But the idea being that this will actually allow you to protect files if you don't want any kind of printing or external use of the file. Now, clearly, people can go and take a screenshot or something, and this one took a little while to compute because it's a bigger PowerPoint. But you'll see that most of even the complex graphics and animations are pretty well rendered here in a static environment. I can favorite a file, so I can just mark something with a star, then go over to favorites. And so if I have a number of files that I'm working on that are active, those are there available for me. There's full, let me pull this up. So if I see this file here, let's say test doc, and I go over to my actual native client. So here is just Finder on Mac. And again, this works the same on Windows and Explorer. You'll see a little agent running up here. And this agent is actually providing that two-way synchronization from my desktop up into the server. And so similarly, if those of you that have used Dropbox, that's how that works. And so here I'll just open this document up with Word and maybe just make a change. Save it. And then you'll see the cloud turn blue for a second as it's syncing it up over my really slow MiFi and pulling it back down. And then there it is on the web. It says, OK, we've got it. And now I can click Show Latest Version. It'll convert that, preview it. And now if it worked, you'll see test 1, 2, 3. And so basically, two-way sync. And now if I wanted to go back, or there's multiple people working on that, I would see those versions here laid out right inside of the application. And I can roll back to a version if I say, oh, I didn't really like that change. That was a mistake. Let's make this the latest version. I can click that, and then it'll now pop that up to now that's the latest version. We have commenting, so whoever has access to those files can edit that. Question in the back? That's a great question. So the question was, if I move this file on the local file system, would it maintain the state or metadata around this in all the versions? And the answer is it does. So we now have move and rename support. That was something that wasn't in the beta that now we do have. So when you move files or folders, the metadata is preserved, and we keep that ID and track that across moves, which is really important. Similarly, if you do like a delete and then a restore, you can keep that metadata saved. Good question. Another change from the beta for those of you that are in the beta is we now, on the sync clients, actually sync shared data as well as local data. So you'll see that all of the folders are synced, not just my own files. Also the files that were shared with me are also synced down locally. And if I have access to edit those, I can make those edits and have those go up natively directly from the sync agent. So JJ talked a little bit about some of the audit trail information. And so here's kind of a user's view of that kind of history or audit trail of things that have changed. And so I can filter that and say, maybe just show me all the things that have been deleted. If I want to go back and find something I deleted, you can see that. And then you can undelete it if you'd like to put that back. But this is the end user view. There's a similar idea on the admin side. You have this same view to go back and try to trace where a file's been, what clients have downloaded it, who's had access to it, who's changed it, who's modified it. And so it's kind of a lightweight way of going and doing some auditing around where files have been or folders have moved to. So that's most of the web stuff. Let me jump over to the iPad client here. And so I have my iPad, and I'm going to set up AirPlay. Turn on mirroring. With any luck, that will come up. Cool. So here's the iPad client. So now I'll put it down so I can actually type with one hand. But now, so this is the same files and folders that I had on the web client. Again, you can click them here, you'll download, you'll get the preview. And you'll notice here that we're actually using the Apple preview. So probably in a future version, we'll switch to using our preview just because the fidelity of our preview is actually stronger than the built-in Apple preview. If you want to make something full screen, if you're doing a presentation or something, you can do that. You'll notice that we have open with, so you click that and you can open in or open with other applications that support that doc type. And again, we'll show on the admin side that's configurable. You can actually fully disable that, or you can set a whitelist and say only allow documents to be opened with programs that you allow or support. Again, kind of a security control or a policy control that you as an admin can set. Click through a couple more folders here. Again, applications, computers. So again, all these are available, part of the suite. Single sign-on into your View desktops from the iPad. Single sign-on into SaaS apps, again, from the iPad. So another part of the suite that you can learn about if you want to come to our booth. We have some more demos of that there in the expo hall. So starred means something a little bit different. It's the same files that I've starred on the web client, but in this case, it's proactive downloading so that they're actually cached for offline use. So we download those files and keep those in sync for offline use. And then we also opportunistically cache files that you've viewed recently. So the ones that I've viewed in the last so many days or hours are kept up into a certain size limit. So that allows pretty fast access when you're offline. So now I'm going to switch back and demo a little bit of the admin client, and then we'll jump into the architecture. So this is the Horizon Suite admin client, and so the homepage just shows which modules you have enabled and some details or data around those modules. Users and groups are pulled from AD, so if I click on that, you'll see the groups that I have synced in from AD. And these are the native groups in AD, but we also have the ability to create dynamic or local groups. So a lot of times in companies, the AD group list is controlled by somebody else other than who manages applications. And so many times you want to create a different cut of users or a different set of groups that aren't actually in AD, but you want to be able to provision and entitle applications based on those groups. And so this allows you to create those dynamic groups. Maybe everybody who's based in building 2 or everybody that's in a certain office location or something like that. Next tab here is the catalog. So this is the applications catalog. And so this will show all of the applications that are available for you as the admin to then entitle to your users. Loading. Eventually. Try a different Wi-Fi connection. Not going. All right, so basically what if I would get down there, I would get to the class of service, and you'd be able to get to the data settings. And then I can now, class of service is the way that we group policies. So class of service is just a group of policies that can be applied to a group or to an individual user. And there's some simple inheritance that allows those overrides to happen. So you can apply policy to the top level group, and then on an individual user or subset of users, then apply overrides. And so we'll pop open one of these class of services and see, what are some of the types of things that are set in there. And if this connection's coming up, I might be out of luck. So if it was loading, the types of things you would see would be turning off the open-in, being able to show whether or not you can share with the types of users, the domain settings, being able to select the lists that open-in can work with, the types of files that you allow people to upload and download, and you can work through all of the other settings around quota and around sharing permissions. So I think I've run out of luck here in terms of getting any farther. But that was basically the last page that I was going to show. So, there it goes, finally. All right, so quota, the name, the quota warning message if you want to configure that, when you warn people, the threshold, the maximum file size if you want to set some kind of limit. We've tested with pretty big files. We've had people uploading DVD ISOs and huge VMs, and so it is possible to upload really, really large files because we support streaming throughout the system. The file types that are disallowed, so you can block certain file types. Trash, when do you auto dump trash if you want that feature? Sharing expiration is a pretty cool one. So that says you can go in and set a policy that says anytime somebody shared something publicly after 7 days, just disable that share. So it kind of automatically kind of cleans up some of those shares that are out there if you don't want those sitting around for a longer lifetime. PIN and passcode required, so you click that box and that will enforce a PIN on the application. So when people launch the app on mobile, it gives you one extra level of security around having to have a PIN, so somebody has to know they can't just go in and browse those files. Here was the open with I was talking about, and the allowed apps, or the white list of apps that you allow to be open with. And we'll continue to expand and add to these as we get closer to the beta of all of the suite. And so we'll talk about beta in a little bit at the end, and we can talk about some of the things we've already learned and changed from that. Cool. So JJ, you want to jump back into architecture?
Questions over there?
Any questions from the demo before I? Where are the files actually stored? Yep, so in the architecture, we'll talk about the different storage options. So we've got a slide on that, so that's a good question. I'll hold that. Any more? All right, cool. So we'll jump to architecture and then keep moving.
All right, thanks, Kevin. By the way, this is not really just a demo anymore. Internally, we've been using this in production, managing all our own data, in fact, critical data every day, for many months now. So this is a high-level conceptual architecture first. We want to look at the overview first and then zoom in. So if you step back and look at the whole deployment architecture, on the left side of the screen is what you set up in your data center, in the vSphere environment. So at the very bottom layer, that's storage. And this can be any type of vSphere compatible storage. It can be NAS, can be SAN, can be a number of other things. And the next level up, of course, hypervisor, and then above that, the actual VMs. So the VMs are where Octopus applications run, where the software actually runs. So out of box, when you initially set up the vApp, by default comes with one single data node. That is the Octopus node. Right. But we know that in production, most people will set up more than just one data node for scale as well as for availability. So we make it very easy for you to clone multiple data nodes. And then it's all done through the UI admin console. So you can actually scale to as many VMs as you want. In fact, we deliberately architected the product to be scale virtually with no limit. In fact, you probably hit the vSphere theoretical limit before you hit any software limit of Octopus in terms of number of VMs you can scale to. And even though we designed to scale to any number of VMs, the reason that we know that you can scale to that scale is because the architecture is so-called a share-nothing architecture. Every single VM can function all by itself because it has all the ingredients needed from storage all the way to the application code, self-contained in a VM. Right? So that's how we know it can go to any size. But even if you reach the 100 VM nodes, it will still form a kind of forest of all these VM trees, and it will still function as if it's a single VM. From the end user point of view, they don't really know. Even if user A is on node A and user B is on node B, they don't really know that. They can share as if they are in the same VM. And on the right side is the range of clients we support, from mobile to desktop to web. All these clients, when you first authenticate with a client with the service will register the client, and that's how we can track these clients, and that's how eventually, if needed, we can remote wipe these clients. So that's sort of the very high-level overview of the architecture. Now let's zoom into each VM. We said that each VM is self-contained. What's inside of each VM? These are the things inside each VM. In the middle, the red box is the software. And the black boxes inside the red box are the modules of Octopus. And each module is responsible for certain functionality of the product. Like, for example, there are modules specifically responsible for bandwidth optimization. There are things for storage optimization. There are document conversion, revision control, and change tracking, all kinds of things. And at the very top, the range of APIs we support. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but before we get to that, I want to draw your attention first to the bottom layer where the storage lies. So there was a question about where we store the data. In fact, we don't really store, it's not like we have a vSphere underneath everything and we just store data on the file system. There are multiple data stores. On the lower left corner is the file blob store. That's where we store the content of all the files. And that's typically the largest in size compared to all the other data stores because that's only intuitive. Usually your file name is much smaller than the content of the file, right? So that's the file blob store is where we store the files. And then there are multiple options of what kind of storage to use to store these content blobs. You can be, VM controller like VMDK or RDM type of storage. It can also be a third-party object store, and you need an adapter to hook that up with Octopus, but we can support that. So in addition to where you store the actual data, actual content of the files, you also want to have the ability to tell what they are. So that's where the metadata comes into the picture. That's the next box over. We store metadata in MySQL. There is an embedded MySQL database within each VM. So what kind of data we store in MySQL? Things like file name, folder hierarchy, and user permissions, who can see what kind of data. There's also revision information. There's also timestamp. And then, more importantly, there's also change tracking, like which transaction created this object. Right? Things like that is in metadata. And then the next box over, that's where we store content index. Every single file, when it's injected into the system, when it's created or when it's updated, the system will extract the text out of the file. We understand a number of files. The file types that's most critical to common business use, like Microsoft Office formats. We recognize all that. We can extract the text out of those, and we index that. And this is very important for content discovery, so that not only you can search by file names and hierarchy and who owns it, you can also search by content. Unstructured search. And then finally, the next box over, that's where we store journal of the entire application. The reason we need journal is for crash consistency, because just like any system, when you design software, you want to assume that at any time the software can crash. It's not because the software may have bug. That could happen as well, but more often it's hardware failure. Somebody kicked a cable, a power outage, things like that. So you want to make sure that the data system, especially important to data system is crash consistent. And this is where the journal comes in, because we need to protect this cross-store. We involve multiple stores. We want to have a cross-store consistency, and that's what the journal offers. So on the top, let's look at the APIs. All these APIs will be documented and publicly available. So if you need to write a third-party application to take advantage of Octopus as a data distribution system, you can do that. So the leftmost one is the Sync API. This is the API for our Sync clients to go to the server and ask for questions like, since I last talked to you, what's new? Right. We designed the Sync API to be very efficient, so the server will only tell what's relevant to any given Syncline. This is exactly what has changed since your last sync state. So the next API is Web API. This is designed for thin clients that does not track its own state. The next over, the push API. This is for us to do near real-time notification of change to the various clients, because this is very important for a team share environment. Let's say that you have 100 users on a team share. Any given user, when they edit a file on their local file system, when they save, the change gets pushed to the cloud, and then the Octopus server will figure out how many other active clients are listening for change. And they will be notified of the change. They will immediately come in and grab the latest change so that they can reach in sync with the server very quickly. So this kind of sort of near real-time dynamic is very important and is realized by the push API. Any questions so far? All right, we're good. So the next picture is about the interaction between the sync client and the server. Within the sync API, there are actually two categories of API calls. There's the control side, and there is the data side. So we said earlier that you can have a number of data nodes. You can have as many data VMs as you ever want to scale the system, right? But the users are assigned to individual data nodes. At the same time, users can share files to any user in the system. So that means that there's going to be some cross-VM information going on, right? So the control API is the client uses the control API to figure out what needs to be done or tell the server what to do. But the actual uploading and downloading of bytes of files, of content, is all done through the data API. And we managed to optimize the data API to be the most efficient, because we know that that's likely to consume most of the bandwidth, right? So the clients will always, the client may go to various different VM nodes to get various information, but when it needs to download or upload files, it will always go to the home server. So finally, let's look at how the Syncline works. Syncline is the client that you run on Windows or Mac desktop. This is, even though we call it a client, it's really a background service. It's a daemon service that runs in the background out of users' way. And users don't really pay attention to these things. When the user saves a file in a location on a local file system that's under the sync control, the background process will automatically bring the local file system in sync with the remote file system. So at the core is a sync engine. It gets the remote and the local change from the remote server as well as from the local file system. And when it receives these changes, it compares three pieces of information: the server change, the client change, and what's stored in the local database, which is the last sync state. And with these three pieces of information, it figures out what to do, how to resolve conflicts, what to tell the server to do, what to tell the local file system to do. Right? And then it goes on and on until the client state and the server state are in complete sync. And there was a question earlier about whether we're doing true move and rename. The beta program we're currently running, the code is still doing, when you move a file, it's actually delete and then add. Right? That's not only not very efficient, you also lose metadata in the process because you're going to lose all the revision information, you're going to lose all the sharing information. The GA release, in fact, the internal version we're running, we already have true rename and the true move. The reason that it comes out late compared to the initial beta is because that's actually hard to do. When you start to support true rename and true move, there's going to be a whole lot more conflicts you need to resolve when multiple users share the same set of files. And that's why many of our competitors don't do that. When you, for example, use Dropbox, you move a file, you lose all the revisions. But this is the stuff that we understand is important to our users and to our customers. That's why we took the pain to make sure that we get that right. So that's what I want to say about the architecture of the product. So far, any questions? Yeah. Yeah. So
Repeat
the question is
for the audio. Repeat the question for the audio.
Yeah. So the question is, what about existing storage infrastructure? Like, how are we going to use these storage? Is it NAS or do we use NFS? So the short answer is we recommend that you use vSphere compatible storage, which is to provision these storage with vSphere first, and then expose those to the VM through vSphere. We can certainly support alternative ways. As long as the VM can see the storage, we can use it. But directly mounting NFS into the guest is not recommended because it would defeat things like failover and various other things. That is, like a vSphere HA. So you're going to lose a benefit of the layer 1 infrastructure. Yeah. Right. So I didn't get to the first question. I got the second question.
First question, is there going to be like an upgrade path or like a migration wizard that will
Right. Got it. Yeah. So the product in the V1 form is not going to come with the out-of-box migration. That's because there are just too many different scenarios how customers want to structure their data and move their data. But because the APIs are all open, you can certainly write such a migration script very easily. That's number one. And number two is, if you don't want to write a script and you just want to make your user do some work, what you can tell your user is install a client on their various desktops and drop their own files into these clients and then push them to the server. So that works too. As we learn more from you and in our beta program and after GA, once we figure out that there's a common theme, we may build these migration tools into a product going forward. And the second question is about deduplication. The V1 deduplication at the application level, the capability is thin. That's on our roadmap for V2. But you can certainly use the storage vendor provided deduplication. And usually that's very effective. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah, so Kevin is going to discuss deployment considerations, and HA and data recovery is part of that. Anything else? One more, maybe? Yeah. So there is, we're working with a number of third-party vendors to build the DLP into the product. Our current plan is to make an API available so that a third party can integrate using third-party DLP solutions. Most likely, we're not going to have DLP out of box. All right, with that, Kevin?
Cool. So we'll run through a couple examples of deployment of what we're kind of talking about or thinking about, and then a couple slides on our beta program so far, and then we'll save the rest of the time for questions. So when you get the application, like JJ mentioned, it's a vApp. You grab that, drag that into vCenter. It lays down 5 VMs. So starting on your left, my right, is the configurator. That basically is the place where you enter your information to kind of bootstrap the license information and things of that nature. The connector is what actually connects to AD and brings down and keeps the synchronization between AD and the Horizon suite in check. It also is where the authentication delegation happens once you're up and running. The proxy is what you can sit in your DMZ if you want to have some network flexibility on where you end up with the proxy, but that's basically where we do VPN transversal and what will actually set at the edge of your network. And then the final two VMs are the management VA, which is the admin console. You saw the web application of that, and that's where all the policy and all of those settings are maintained. And then the Octopus VA or the Horizon Data VA is where all of the actual file synchronization and application code will live. And so more than likely, the first 4 VAs, you probably only need one, maybe a couple proxies for failover. And then the Octopus VA, depending on the size of your deployment, you'll scale out more data nodes. So this is a slightly different view of the same 5 VMs, but now it kind of exploded into their parts. And so the Horizon Gateway is basically the proxy. You see all the various clients above that. So all of the routing to the backend servers is done through the gateway. The manager API, the manager server, and then the data server are the 2 other VMs, and you can see all those components. And JJ had walked through the data ones in detail. And then down at the bottom are the configurator and connector VMs, and those connect in. Configurator goes into VC, there's a VC extension, and then the connector plugs into AD. Similarly, there's some other gateways that are optional around AppBlast if that's installed, and then an external DB if you're using a third-party database for the backend. We talked a little bit about scalability and availability, but we end up leveraging a lot of the, obviously, VMware and vSphere technologies to do that. And so one deployment option that we've been kind of toying with in the lab and recommending is you set up 3 servers. That way you have the ability to do vMotion of the VMs across to other servers. But again, you guys most of you have probably used vSphere before and have your recommended way of how you want to lay out your VMs. And there's no reason why the Horizon suite can't work within that environment. So it really depends, and you have that flexibility. But it's just a quick high level. And here's kind of a proposed 10K architecture that we've been toying with. And again, we're still early in testing. And so based on some more user profile data from the expanded beta, and as we continue to sample different ideas in the lab and test latest hardware and different storage ideas, we'll probably fine tune this and continue with probably several kind of recommendations when we go in to release the product. And then again, have variances in that for small, medium, large, depending on the size of the deployment. And so here we said basically each of the VMs gets 2 vCPUs, 16 gigs of RAM. We'll talk on the second slide about the option of VMDKs versus RDM in the storage environment, and then 3 or 4 physical servers, and then some whatever types of storage you want to attach behind that. Storage specifically is a big one that comes up. We've already had a couple questions on it. It's something everybody always asks. What can I reuse? I already have storage today. How do I do this, and what is it required to mount Horizon Data Storage? And so VMDKs is kind of the first choice, but the limitation of the size of those, in a large deployment, you'll end up with a large number of VMDKs. And so more than likely on the larger customers, people will just directly map the LUNs with RDM and then have basically a huge partition exported right up into the VM for Horizon Data to write its data to. And we're also working with a number of storage vendors. We talked about dedupe, but one of the nice things is we have an SDK that allows you to abstract the storage layer, and so you can have that call into a third-party storage vendor, and they can have SDKs that have the data instead of writing directly to disk through the application code. It'll call an API and actually write into a cloud-based store. And so we've worked with the MC guys around Atmos and Isilon to see how they can leverage some of the technology that they have in the storage layer, and by giving them the raw kind of file I/O calls right into an SDK. And so we expect to work with more partners as we expand the beta program, and by the time we release it, probably have a number of storage providers working with us to have another option for storage. So a number of different vSphere technologies that we will recommend or we'll use as we deploy Horizon. But I'm not going to go through each of them. You can read them. I think many of you are probably familiar with these, and you can come by the booth or come up here after if we want to talk about specific scenarios in your environment. So 2 quick slides on the beta, and then we'll jump into questions and go through that. So first of all, we had a ton of signups, so thank you guys all. I know a lot of you, I talked to you before, already have been participating in the beta, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback for that. So 18,000, 19,000 people signed up. We've currently activated around 800 or 900, many different countries, every different geo and segment that you can think of. And we are slowly still kind of expanding that private beta. And so If you're interested and you're not in the beta today, reach out to your VMware rep, and we're kind of continuing to activate those and basing the priority based on customers that come through their VMware rep. So what did we learn so far? So the number one thing is everybody just says, ship it, please. I have this problem today. I really, really, really just want it, to take what we have. And so we understand that, and we're trying to push towards that. But I think, hopefully we're on a plan here that we can get this out sooner than later. The second one is people hated our admin console that we shipped with the beta. And so fortunately, that's one of the areas where the application manager had a strong admin setup. And so we're moving all of that application management into a single UI. So you'll have one pane of glass to manage all of the administration. Security was another area that we get a lot of questions on. And I think we still have a lot to learn around, what are the feature set that's going to come out in V1. And mobile security was key, around encryption. What can you turn on and off? What can you protect? What is possible on the device to lock it down? And then how secure can you make that for the users? Additional controls and levers. People are always looking for what other gates can you set up around data protection. JJ talked about some of the APIs that we're going to have where you can plug in DLP or some of the other third-party providers for legal intercept or those type of things. And then the final one is storage. Since Octopus ends up being kind of a replacement or alternative to storage that you're using today or ways that you're exporting data to your users, these are a number of areas that I think we want to prioritize, either in V1 or soon after. So CIFS and NFS, how are we going to support that? Rolling out the kind of three main shares that we see in a lot of environments. So home shares that are kind of each user's personal share. These branch office kind of geolocated branch caches is another one that comes up a lot in customer conversations. And then finally is kind of those global or shared data. So all of these are areas that we're going to continue to ask questions and work with our beta customers to try to find solutions to these. Many of them will probably end up being roadmap items, but it's something we're definitely interested in learning more about. So that's the end of the prepared content. If you guys want to come up to the mic, or if you don't have any questions, you can take off and be done. But if you have questions, jump to the mic and feel free to ask some questions, and we'll spend the rest of the time answering questions.
Thank you.